Hi everyone, welcome to week 6. So this week I decided it would be a good idea. We're about a third of the way through the semester. If we did kind of a semester reflection this far, each one of our assignments really stack upon one another, but there's a lot of concepts that are kind of intertwined, and I wanted to point out some of those observations for you real quick in kind of a comprehensive reflection. I'm also going to talk specifically about a retail mix. I think this is something that was maybe a stressor for some of you in this last week's assignment. It was step 6, I believe, and we'll talk about that, kind of ease that anxiety. And remember, your final retail plan is going to give you an opportunity to use the feedback that I give you on the assignments and improve that. So that's what I'm ultimately looking for, is understanding and improvement on these different concepts. So, and I'm going to review last week's assignment about the strategic retail planning process, and it is a process. It's not step 1, then step 2, then step 3. Sometimes it happens in different orders, and we will talk about that. And we'll also do an overview of this week and the assignment, the customer service journal, which is not due until 2 weeks from now. So you'll have a little bit of time to do some reflection on that. So we'll just start off with the 5 different topics that we've covered thus far in the semester. So first off, location. Second, we talked about concepts of design and functional layout and the various types of definitions associated with or opportunities associated with retail. So basically, what is retail? What we talked about in week 2. And week 3, we talked about customer demographics and how it really is kind of a process identifying those different things. We'll kind of touch upon that in just a moment. And week 4, we talked about multi-channels for sales. And 5 was our marketing strategy. And again, that's a process. So week 1, just briefly, I wanted to touch base here on locations. We've got both retail locations, and then we've got site locations, multiple stores in a particular area. And probably the most important, or at least as far as example that we're going to use in this semester to build off of for our project, is that pop-up location. And one thing I wanted to clarify about a pop-up location is that it doesn't necessarily need to be just a startup. It may be an electric commerce or an e-commerce establishment that decided to do some brick and mortar maybe seasonally, or it could possibly be an already well-established business, both brick and mortar and electronic commerce, but they just want to put their foot in the door in a particular area to service some needs. So just some clarification there. So week 2, the key point here, concept and design. And in chapter 1, we talked about what is retailing and how there's different entrepreneurial opportunities with it and different management opportunities. And it's very vast, very varied. So we've got layout and design in chapter 17 was touched on there, and that was really the essence of the assignment. We put together a functional layout plan, and you guys did an excellent job putting together a logo, and we just sort of had this jumping off point that we would continue to build on through the semester. So with week 3, customer demographics, it's really a process to define and establish what that is. Customers buy based on both needs and influences. Customers are grouped into segments based on those needs as they're identified. And so we had an assignment, who are your customers? You guys did a great job with that. So here we have a little bit of something I wanted to put out in front of you from the book that really talks about the recognizing need and the stages that a customer might go through. As you can see, it's not necessarily 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. Sometimes we have some reevaluation that comes through here. So really, here's the selecting the retailer themselves. So I need to buy something. And then they go through this process to find an actual retailer. They evaluate the different options that might be available. And that could be based on price, or it could be based on what they're looking for. And there's a little bit of studying that goes on here. And as they go through, they might become return customers based on their first experience. And that's when you have that loyalty. So just some things to look at here going forward to kind of build on that final project we have coming. And like I pointed out earlier, it's a process, and it's not always in these linear steps that we sometimes like to think of. We're going to do step 1, then we're going to do step 2. So, and I put this in the lecture before, but I'm just going to go ahead and touch base again. We've got demographics, we've got geography, where they're located. Are you in such a great location that they buy your product because you're there and you're convenient? And also culture and values that kind of play in there, and customer buying behavior. So they have that repetition. All right, moving forward to week 4. And this was sales channels for retailers. So there's various types of retailers, and really what makes them different from each other. We've got price offerings that make them different, service offerings. Some are food retailers, and some are specialty retailers. So there's lots of things that make us these retailing opportunities different from each other, and just being able to identify those differences is important. All right. We also talked about the sales channels for these various retailers. So based on the type of retailer you are, you might have a different type of sales channel. So number 1 that we talked about really is the store walk-in traffic. But here's some other ones along with some examples. We've got the as seen on TV, and that's a direct response model. We've got QVC, which is a home shopping. Tupperware or Mary Kay would be direct selling, not to be confused with direct response. We've got automated, so vending machines, catalog, and just an example would be LLB, and I'm sure they do electronic commerce as well. And we are going to talk more in week 7 about e-commerce, but these are the sales channels discussed in week 4. So on to week 5, and that was last week. So this was a marketing strategy was the main concern of this week. And we start out with this mission statement that we shared in the discussion forum. And then there was this 7-step assignment that we were to turn in. So let's talk about that for a second. So stages in the strategic planning process, if I can just point out again that you don't necessarily go through steps 1 through 7 and then you're done. And also we need to understand the purpose of doing this. And the whole reason why we go through these steps is to build a competitive advantage, select market segments, determine appropriate retail format. So this is ultimately why we're doing this process. We really want to be competitive. We want to make sure what our market segments are and where we would be able to benefit most from. And just really check how we're doing. There's this reevaluation process as we go through these steps. So those things to keep in mind, and plan for the future. Okay, so the first step is the mission statement. And then this is a situational audit, a SWOT analysis, and that's your current state, how you're doing now. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with the SWOT analysis. That was covered in the article that we posted last week. But because of the SWOT analysis, that allows us to identify these opportunities. And then we can evaluate those strategic opportunities. So which ones are we going to go to? There may be several opportunities, but which one are we going to go after? And that way we set these specific objectives and find out what resources are needed or available, those that we can actually allocate and obtain to be able to go after those opportunities. And then also developing a retail mix. And that's what I'm going to talk about here in just a moment. We'll talk in detail about the retail mix. But the secret behind step 7 is you're just going to reevaluate and make adjustments based on success or failure. So one example might be that if you get here to the point where you're trying to allocate resources and just you do not have the funding to be able to increase sales in the way that you had possibly planned on, then you're going to need to go back and identify a different opportunity that you would have those resources for. So look at it like a process, not necessarily a checklist that you get it done and then you move forward. So again, it's a process, not a checklist. So in the real world, it's not done in this order. It's important to know that. So I'm going to talk about retail mix for a second. I want to kind of get rid of some of the confusion here. Really, ultimately, you have a retail mix to satisfy needs, and you just want to influence buying decisions. That's the purpose for this retail mix. And it contains some different pieces here. And we've talked about most of them. First, price, and we're going to talk a little bit more about pricing, but we did talk about the fact that there are different price offerings, different cost offerings. And merchandise, that's part of your retail mix, what you're going to sell. A customer service and how you are reaching or how you are selling what you have to offer to your customers. We've got store layout and design. Again, this is going to either satisfy a need or influence a buying decision in one way or another. Promotion and advertising. How are you going to let them know what you have to offer? And also location. And that was the very first thing that we talked about this semester is location. So again, when you hear retail mix, think of two things. Satisfying needs. What are the things involved in satisfying the customer's needs and influencing their buying decision? That is what a retail mix is. So here we are at week 6, and I'm just going to briefly describe some of the things that we have involved going on this week. I want you to read chapters 11 and 18, and what I'd really like you to do, I think it would be more beneficial, especially as we kind of do a look back at the weeks in next week's lecture. I want you to look at the learning objectives. So it is the very first page. For example, chapter 11, one of the learning objectives is to understand how customer shopping and data are collected. That's one of your objectives. So as you read, pay close attention to how is this data collected about customers. So keep that in mind. I want you to also read the posted article about how the customers, not always right, they're just never wrong. And we have a few discussion questions here. Again, I want you guys to think about this retail mix and not be overwhelmed by it. That's going to be our carryover discussion. And week 6, we also are going to talk about what your takeaway is, what you found interesting, what applied to you, what you feel is helpful going forward. And we are going to talk about customer relationship management process. So, different management, the way that we are able to manage the relationship with a customer, and that's established there. So please participate in the discussion forums. The assignment this week and next week, it's actually not going to be due till March 8th, is a customer service reflection journal. So if you have any questions on that, please let me know. But I want to know the different experiences that you're having and how you feel like the customer service could be improved, or how possibly things would have been were done excellent if you had good customer service, or how that might pertain to your offering as far as a pop application, if there's anything that you would use as well. So you know how to get a hold of me. I apologize for last week. I had lost my voice, so that's one of the reasons why we didn't have a lecture posted there. I had the presentation, but the voiceover was just not happening. So we borrowed some of Robin's greatness for last week, though. But if you have any questions about the assignment or anything going forward, please let me know. You know how to get a hold of me, and we will have a great week. Talk to you soon.